Number one curmudgeon and opportunist has been very busy lately sucking up to Donald Trump for influence and profits, and this breaking story reveals what I think is their collusion in plain sight, a deal that could be worth billions. I'm talking about Kevin O'Leary, the unapologetic Canadian capitalist who apparently is following Elon Musk's playbook by kissing the Trump ring often, giving credence to every odd utterance, and inserting himself wherever there's a Canadian or US dollar to be made. I will share the details of the shady cabal that were revealed today in just a minute, but first, in case you're not a viewer of Shark Tank, here's a quick compilation of the villain role that he plays, which I don't think is a departure from who he is. He thrives on being unlikable. Does that remind you of anyone we know?
And they said it's time to shut you down and crush you like the cockroach you are. Now you kids are seeing what life is really like, and this is an important lesson for you. In the end, it's only about the money all of the time. Rebecca, I hate cats.
But you love money, right?
I love money.
Okay.
No question about it. But if a cat ever gave me a problem and I was in a high apartment, I wouldn't have a problem with that cat 5 minutes later.
Before today, O'Leary was best known in Trump world for inserting himself into the conversation around Donald's ridiculous suggestion that Canada become the 51st state. First, he sane-washed the statement on Fox, and then he positioned himself as a representative of Canada who could broker the deal. Have a look, and on the other side, I'll share today's news that signals his real angle for sucking up to Trump.
Kevin, you are a man from the north. This is your native land. What are you hearing? Is this for real? What are you hearing from people up there?
More than half of Canadians, there's 41 million of them, want to know more, want to understand what the proposal really is, because the concept of an economic union has been bandied around for 40 years. And it makes sense because the resources Canada have, the U.S. needs, particularly power and water. But there's something else. You know, we've been talking about the border between Canada and the United States. That's not the problem. The Pentagon is worried, and has been for decades, about the northern border where China and the USSR are. And we had NORAD decades ago, but China was a nothing burger back then. Now they're a serious problem. There is something great here to be done, because if you figured out a way to put these two countries together, it would be the most powerful country on earth, the most powerful military on earth, the most powerful in resources, and no adversary anywhere would mess with it. That's the prize.
Yeah. Let's start with this idea that this is just the beginning of negotiations. People are talking about it. I want to just throw up a survey. They actually polled Canadians about this already. And this is what Canadians said about becoming the 51st state. 13% said yes, so there is a crowd there. 82% said no.
Yeah, that poll is irrelevant. Many Canadians are interested in understanding more about how we could push this idea forward, and I'm one of them. I think this is a great idea, and I think the potential is massive, and the opportunity is huge.
Are you going down to Mar-a-Lago?
I'd love to go down to Mar-a-Lago. You know, I'm obviously interested in it because I do business on both sides of the border, and I'm going to the inauguration. I'm excited about it.
And there it is. O'Leary signaled that he was eager to get in front of Trump, but as it turns out, the reason wasn't to support Trump's odd and impossible fantasy. It's because of something that he's involved with that is worth billions to himself and his partners. And I'll let him explain via the announcement he made today after having that much-desired Mar-a-Lago meeting with Trump.
Just back from Mar-a-Lago, he was born in Montreal, has some very strong feelings about joining our country with Canada. Tell us a little bit about your conversation with President-elect Trump on this issue.
I had two topics that I wanted to talk to him about. Number one was integrating Canada towards a North American Union for greater strength, just period. The world's a difficult place these days, and most Canadians would like to look at that opportunity without giving up their sovereignty. So low-hanging fruit would be combined currency, for example, combining the Bank of Canada with the Fed, things like that. We are the largest trading partners. But I had another agenda item that was very important to me, and we announced that this morning. I have joined with Frank McCourt to buy TikTok, and this is a very complicated deal. It's a multi-billion-dollar deal. We're going to have to work with President Trump. This is a bipartisan situation. We have to work initially with Biden, and we want to, and then on midday, 12:05, Trump will be who we have to work with to close the deal in the months ahead. So I wanted to let him know, as well as others in his cabinet, that we're doing this, and we're going to need their help.
Can you smell what I smell? This really reeks. O'Leary confirmed that he's appointed himself as a representative of Canada and will indulge Trump's desire to put his country at the service of the Donald. And then he shared that he just happens to be a partner in a multi-billion-dollar deal for TikTok, something that the Trump-leaning Supreme Court will be ruling on very soon. This is what I'm calling collusion in plain sight. And just like Elon Musk, who will have a role in government despite the glaring conflicts of interest, O'Leary is rushing to Trump's side to be part of the decadent billionaire boys club that is being assembled. As Yakov Smirnoff would say, what a country! And for those interested in the next step regarding Trump and TikTok, I'll give CBS the final word to break it down.
Come January 19th, the social media app TikTok could be banned in the U.S. unless its Chinese parent company sells it. President-elect Donald Trump wants the Supreme Court to step in to delay that. In a briefing filed last week, Trump requested the High Court suspend the ban until after he takes office while he works on a, quote, political resolution. The ban would take place one day prior to Trump taking office. The U.S. government says TikTok's ties to China pose national security risks, but opponents say a ban violates the First Amendment. TikTok and its parent company ByteDance will appeal the ban before the Supreme Court on January 10th.
Driving dynamic part of the world economy is no longer Europe, North America, and all of that. That has moved on. The dynamic of capitalism, which started in New England in the United States, Western Hemisphere, and then moved on. You know where it's gone now? To Asia, and it is on the route to going to Latin America and Africa too. This is momentous. It is, for example, more important economically than is being understood or discussed or even admitted by both of our major candidates for president. What we know about the history of every other empire that also grew, was powerful, and then died was that the ride up as you're growing is a lot more fun and pleasant than the ride down when you're dying. The ride up was the 20th century, which many of you, like me, lived through. We now have to figure out how we descend when our empire is dying. What the United States is doing is typical. Denial has always been there. You can travel to Britain today and encounter no small number of people who still imagine that the British Empire is still there. Witness the inauguration ceremonies for King Charles, who's the king of nobody. The next time you hear an American politician or you read in an American newspaper how the American economy is doing better than anyone in the world, please remember the word denial. That kind of statement, which I encounter almost every day, is the exact equivalent of a toddler putting fingers in front of her eyes or nose in hoping that the scary dog will go away. Not only have the Chinese outgrown us, but they have built an alliance with other countries that are recognizing that what was true for the last 75 years, a global economy dominated by the United States as the country that came out of World War II with no bombs that fell on it other than Pearl Harbor, and less damage than any other developed country. The Chinese have built an alliance called the BRICS, B-R-I-C-S. You don't hear as much about it as you ought to. It started a few years ago, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, 5 countries. A year and a half ago, 6 more joined. And 3 weeks ago, 13 more joined. The BRICS together is more than half the population of this planet. The United States is 4.5%, not 50% of this planet. The total output of goods and services in the BRICS is significantly larger already than the total output of the United States and its major allies, known as the G7. The United States, Canada, Japan, Britain, France, Germany, and Italy. So now every company in the world is reassessing and redesigning its strategy for the future. And what do I mean? They're redesigning because the dominant player in the world of the last 70 years, the United States, isn't the dominant player anymore. There is a bigger player, richer player in the BRICS. The existing BRICS are meeting in Kazan, Russia. They meet in a different country each time they get together for a BRICS summit. Let me give you a second statistic that drives it home. We are in the year 2024. The International Monetary Fund, a creation of the West, of the United States and the G7, which shapes monetary policies around the world. The International Monetary Fund keeps track of how GDP, total output of goods and services, is growing each year. So I decided to show you what I mean by looking at what the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, has to say about rates of growth this year, just to show you that what I'm describing is underway. If you add up the BRICS, even only just the first 5, you add up their GDP, the total output of goods and services that they achieve each year, in 2020, it became, added up, bigger than that of the G7. The United States plus the other 6 added up. All right, we'll start with the United States and try to keep that number I'm about to give you in your mind. GDP growth, according to the IMF, for the United States will be 2.8% in 2024. The year that's almost over. We know what it was the first 3 quarters, so we're estimating the fourth quarter to get that number. And that's what the IMF has given us, 2.8%. Let me look at the other G7s that usually drive that part of the world, Japan and Germany. You put them together, you know what the rate of growth is of the two together? 0%. Germany is in recession, below 0, minus. Japan is just above 0. So you put them together and we're really low. 2.8 in the United States, nothing in Japan and Germany, and the others are small. Now I want to go to the BRICS. South Africa is like Japan. It's growing, but quite slowly. Brazil has the same growth rate as the United States, 2.8% for 2024. But now we get to the big players in the BRICS. Russia, China, and India. So again, let's remember the United States, 2.8%. What is the GDP growth in Russia in 2024? Yeah, Russia, the country fighting the war in Ukraine. Russia GDP growth, according to the IMF, 3.9%. Way more than the United States at 2.8%. Russia, 3.9%. Now let's look at China. There we go. 4.8%. US is 2.8%. China is growing almost twice as fast at 4.8%, which is low for China. And then we come to the winner this year, India, which is growing at 7%, almost 3 times the rate of growth of the United States. The average real wages in the People's Republic of China have quadrupled over the same 30 years. If you want to understand why the government in China is secure, why it is powerful, why economic growth there is celebrated, I just gave you the statistic. Their average wage quadrupled. The average wage in the United States went nowhere. That's not even close, friends. And if you didn't know that, since everything I'm telling you is easily verifiable in 1,000 government statistics, then you understand what I mean by denial. We are therefore experiencing in this country an extraordinary deepening of inequality. At the end of World War II, the United States was less unequal than European countries. Today, we are more unequal than every European country. How did that happen? Well, on the one hand, when corporations went to China and took advantage of low wages and a growing market, it made a fortune for those corporations, and therefore for the top 10% of Americans who own shares. Just a footnote, the top 10% richest Americans own 80% of the stocks and bonds. They did well. The rest of us, we are experiencing a declining empire, which those at the top don't want you to think about. They're managing it quite well. We cannot. That inequality, together with the inflation, gives you Mr. Trump's victory. And the bitterness and divisiveness that is suffusing this economy. And still nobody willing to face these realities or to speak about them. Mr. Trump's economic proposals, whatever else you think of them, are economically incoherent. It's great advertising. I'm protecting you with my walls. It's wonderful. But when it comes now to governing, it's impossible, and it's a bad joke. And the whole world is watching. And while it's watching this bad joke unfold, the gap between the United States and the G7 on one hand, and the People's Republic of China and the BRICS on the other, deepens. The United States' effort to stop, block, undercut China have failed. Been doing it now for 15 years. Started big time under Obama. It doesn't work.
Stay tuned for the next video.
The answer might shock you. Stay tuned as we uncover the high-stakes gamble that could reshape Canadian politics forever. Brett Wilson, the former Dragon's Den investor, is making waves in Canadian politics with an offer that's turning heads. This business tycoon isn't just talking about change, he's putting his money where his mouth is. Wilson's proposal to fund Jagmeet Singh's pension if the NDP leader calls for an early election. Now, you might be wondering, how much are we talking about here? Well, hold on to your hats, because Wilson isn't playing small. He's talking about a cool $2.5 million. That's right, millions of dollars to potentially reshape Canada's political landscape. But here's where it gets really interesting. Wilson isn't just making empty promises. He's serious about raising these funds from other investors who share his vision. It's like a political crowdfunding campaign, but with much higher stakes. Now you might be thinking, is this even legal? Well, Wilson himself admits he's not too concerned about the nitty-gritty details of how government works. He's more focused on the end goal, getting Justin Trudeau out of office. But this cavalier attitude raises some serious questions about the ethics and legality of such a move. Imagine the impact this could have on Canadian politics. We're talking about private investors potentially influencing major political decisions. It's unprecedented, it's controversial, and it's got people talking. But what's driving Wilson to make such a bold move?
There's going to be an election this year.
I know there's going to be an election. Canadians know it's coming in October. It could be sooner in the spring, but you're the one who can make that happen. So why not commit to making it happen?
Let's go back to big picture. One of the greatest investments I could ever make in this country is making sure that we move to an election quickly.
Is it just about removing Trudeau, or is there more to the story? Wilson claims that ousting the current Prime Minister would be worth every penny of this investment. But is there a hidden agenda we're not seeing? Here's the kicker. Wilson initially floated this idea on Twitter, almost as a joke. But now he's doubling down, insisting he's dead serious about making it happen. It's a game-changing move that's left many Canadians stunned. So what does this mean for Jagmeet Singh? At 65, he'd be eligible for an annual pension of $66,000. But Wilson's offer would accelerate and significantly boost that payout. It's a tempting proposition, but one that comes with enormous political implications. Remember when we asked if other investors were lining up to join Wilson's gamble? Well, hold on to your wallets, because the floodgates are opening. A dozen high rollers are now ready to ante up. But here's the million-dollar question. What do these power players stand to gain from toppling the current government? It turns out Brett Wilson isn't a lone wolf in this political wilderness. He's become the leader of a growing pack of investors who are chomping at the bit to fund Jagmeet Singh's pension. This isn't just a one-man show anymore. It's turning into a full-blown investor coalition. The support for Wilson's plan is snowballing faster than a Canadian winter. More and more business bigwigs are jumping on board, ready to open their wallets for a chance at political change. But let's be real.
And the only impediment to an election quickly is Jagmeet Singh. He says he doesn't trust Trudeau, but he refuses to act on his own words.
Polls show that most of them want an election. So if you have the power to make that happen for Canadians, and you're acting in the best interest of Canadians, isn't that what they actually want?
Well, there's going to be an election this year, 2025, or next year.
These aren't your average Joes throwing in a few loonies. We're talking about serious money from serious players. So what's driving these investors to put their money where their mouth is? It's simple. They're betting on change. Wilson himself spilled the beans, saying that changing the government could make him more money in a year than his entire pension offer to Singh. It's like they're treating the election like a high-stakes poker game, and they're all in. But here's where it gets really juicy. Wilson dropped a bombshell stating, if I'm going to invest in Canada. One of the greatest things, if we could change governments, I'd make more in a year than giving up that, call it that, $2.5 million because of the investments, because of the opportunity. This isn't just about politics anymore, it's about cold, hard cash. And these investors aren't just throwing money at a problem, they're making a calculated bet. They're convinced that a new government would be better for business, better for the economy, and better for their bottom line. It's like they're trying to buy a whole new economic landscape. But how much are these investors really willing to shell out? We're not talking chump change here. The numbers being thrown around are in the millions. It's a staggering amount of money, all aimed at one goal, triggering an early election and potentially reshaping Canada's political future. So, is Brett Wilson really offering millions for Jagmeet's pension? You bet he is.
We successfully renegotiated NAFTA and protected Canadian jobs, protected steel workers and aluminum workers, protected our supply managed sectors and agricultural workers.
So I started out with a bit of a smart-ass comment on Twitter saying that I would fund his accelerated pension plan.
And he's got a growing army of wealthy backers ready to join him. This isn't just a political gambit anymore. It's turning into a full-blown movement. What if a single decision could make or break your entire life's work? For Jagmeet Singh, that moment has arrived. As he weighs party loyalty against personal gain, a shocking revelation threatens to turn Canadian politics upside down. Singh finds himself caught in a political tornado. On one side, there's his role as the NDP leader and his rocky relationship with Justin Trudeau. On the other, a tempting offer that could set him up for life. It's a classic case of duty versus desire, and Singh's sweating bullets. The NDP's bank account is looking as empty as a politician's promises, and their poll numbers are about as inspiring as cold poutine. If Singh takes the deal, he could secure his future, but at what cost? The party faithful might see it as a betrayal, leaving the NDP's reputation in tatters. It's like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. Sure, you're doing something, but are you making things worse? But here's where it gets juicy. Singh's past zingers about Trudeau are coming back to haunt him.
Now let me tell you, as much as I could afford to do that myself for the right reasons, again, investing in Canada. I've had a dozen different people reach out and say, can I participate in your program?
You've talked about the Conservatives and what they can do, but they are 20 points ahead. You and the Liberals are sitting further back.
Remember when he said he didn't trust the guy? Now he's got to decide if he trusts these investors more. Talk about being stuck between a rock and a hard place. The stakes couldn't be higher. If Singh says yes, he could be set for life, but his political career might go up in flames faster than a badly timed tweet. If he says no, he keeps his integrity, but can the NDP survive without a financial lifeline? It's like he's playing political Russian roulette and every chamber is loaded. Singh's choice isn't just about him, it's about the future of Canadian politics. Will money talk louder than party loyalty? Can the NDP survive this crisis? And what happens if Singh actually pulls the trigger on this deal? As Singh wrestles with this impossible decision, the entire country is holding its breath. But while he's sweating it out behind closed doors, the public is having a field day. How are everyday Canadians reacting to this political soap opera? Buckle up, because the court of public opinion is about to deliver its verdict, and it's going to be explosive.
Canadians want is a chance to elect a new government. And you can make that happen. Listen, Peter Julian told CBC News that this could happen in the spring. But why wait? What are you waiting for?
And one of my friends said, I might even make money giving a pension to Jagmeet. There's that many people interested in seeing him gone.
As news of Brett Wilson's proposal spreads like wildfire, social media explodes with outrage and support. Where democracy for sale becomes the top trending hashtag. But is this really about selling out, or is it exposing a deeper rot in our political system? Canadians are completely split over this controversial pension offer. On one side, we have people praising Wilson for taking bold action to shake up a stagnant political landscape. They're saying it's about time someone stood up to Justin Trudeau and his government. These supporters see Wilson's move as a creative solution to what they believe is a broken system. But the other side is furious. They're calling this a blatant attempt to buy an election and undermine democracy. Political watchdog groups are sounding the alarm, warning that Wilson's offer could set a dangerous precedent.
Now, whether this is legal, don't know. Is it ethical? I think so. I don't know how the government works, nor do I care. The real point is to drive home, Jagmeet, you're done.
After 9 years of this Prime Minister, everything is broken. 25% of Canadians are now living in poverty.
They argue that if wealthy individuals can influence major political decisions with their checkbooks, what's to stop this from becoming the norm? The debate is raging on social media platforms. Twitter is on fire with competing hashtags, while Dutch democracy for sale is trending. We're also seeing Dang's Wilson 4pm and Shokshi Stop the Investors gaining traction. It's like a virtual shouting match, with both sides trying to drown each other out. This controversy is bringing up some serious questions about the influence of money in politics. Many Canadians are asking, if a pension offer can potentially sway an election, was our democracy ever truly free from financial influence? It's got people thinking about past scandals, like the infamous sponsorship scandal of the early 2000s. Are we seeing history repeat itself, or is this something entirely new?
Once prosperous, Halifax has 35 homeless encampments. The Prime Minister admits in his own press releases 1 in 4 kids are not getting enough food.
And the odds of Trudeau getting reelected, slim to nil. But more importantly, let's let people of Canada call the shots.
As the public outcry grows louder, experts are weighing in on how this could impact future elections. Some are predicting stricter campaign finance laws, while others fear this could open the floodgates to more private money in politics. One thing's for sure, this debate isn't going away anytime soon. The growing controversy is sparking renewed interest in campaign finance reform. People from all political stripes are calling for a review of current laws and regulations. They're demanding more transparency and stricter limits on political contributions. It's clear that Canadians want assurances that their democracy isn't for sale to the highest bidder. As this political drama unfolds, one question remains: how will the government respond to this unprecedented situation? With public opinion divided and the integrity of our political system at stake, all eyes are now on Justin Trudeau and his team. Their next move could define the future of Canadian democracy.
Now, this is how we do it.
Stand for our rights. It's time to shift the political power to its rightful owners, the Canadian citizens and Indigenous peoples of Canada. Dive into our history, understand the need for change, and embark on the quest for true democracy. Are you concerned about our nation's commitment to human rights and self-governance? The power shift to freedom aligns with vital treaties and international laws enabling us to claim our rightful place as collective head of state. We advocate legally replacing the Crown, King Charles III, and our partocracy system with a true democracy, the peoples as the true collective head of state with veto power over our governance, to ensure your voice counts more than party interests. When our national collective civil and political rights are respected, your influence on policies will be direct and impactful. Join us on this noble struggle to make every Canadian and Indigenous peoples a meaningful participant in our future as collective head of state, which was legally owed and kept from us since the patriation of our Constitution, an official decolonization from the United Kingdom of 1982. It's time to correct the past of our government's lies and omissions to the people of our great country before it is too late. People 15 years old and over can sign our Canadian People's Referendum at canadianreferendum.ca and unite for our rights as the collective head of state in our Constitution. Together, we can be the example in reshaping Canada's future, not just for us, but for all peoples worldwide, once and for all. Are you ready to be part of this transformative movement? Join the Power Shift to Freedom movement by the Canadian People's Union and be part of a bold vision for Canada's future. Visit thecpu.ca for more details. Embrace and face the change required on your part to shape our future.
So now the Governor General has the power to fix our country for the people by removing the Liberals immediately and before the next Parliament in session. And she also has, though, to keep in mind that the NDP have also acted on a, I would say, criminal level in the corruption of supporting the Liberals in the thefts of the monies from the Canadian citizens that they took for their own selfish reasons. So the Governor General of Canada, Mary Simon, is the representative of Canada's head of state, King Charles III. This role is established in the Constitution Act 1867, which states that the Governor General will carry on the government of Canada on behalf and in the name of the King. So right now she needs to carry on the government of Canada because it is being destroyed by our politicians, that where none of them in Parliament are removing or enforcing the removal of Justin Trudeau and the Liberals and placing a caretaker government instead while we await a new election. Now, the monarch and vice-regal representatives in Canada, known as the Governor General and Lieutenant Governors, have prerogative and reserved powers, and she has the exact same powers as the Crown. So she needs to be able to exercise that power because she's the only one that can hand out monies in regards to our purse when, let's say, Trudeau would be taken out and have a caretaker government. Then the caretaker government has to ask her, and she's the only one that can give them funds from our securities. So the reserved powers in Canada fall within the royal prerogative and belong specifically to the monarch, as the Constitutional Act 1867 vests all executive power in the country's sovereign. These can be made in theory without the approval of another branch of government or the Crown itself. However, they are only used in emergencies. One of these powers is to ensure that there is always a First Minister, that is a Prime Minister for the federal government, or a Premier under the provincial government. So she needs to to do that immediately. And if she doesn't, and this is why we need the people to get together and force, our referendum, and to force Justin Trudeau to resign, or at least even be, how can I say, the RCMP has to start really looking at pressing charges against him and make sure that he can't leave the country, and neither can Freeland and the rest of the Liberals who have participated in illegal activities against our funds and everything else and our rights. Okay, so we're not going to read this right now either. It's just about what the Governor General of Canada does. And the Governor General and responsible government, the government's version by omission. So they say that, responsible government is peace, order, and good government, the POGG. So when they talk about POGG, that's what they mean. The principle that the executive branch of government is accountable to the elected representatives in the House of Commons. Now, conventions of responsible government, those are informal rules, conventions that require the Governor General to act in accordance with the advice of the Prime Minister, who has the support of the majority of the House of Commons. This statement, okay, and this is my statement here, this statement is not an absolute truth. The Governor General can still fire a Prime Minister even with the support of the House. See Australia, October 1975. And that's because of the letters that were found in 2020 and what transpired in 1975 when all of the constitutional lawyers thought that the Governor General of Australia did not have the right to fire the Prime Minister, and when he had the support, when he was supported by the entire House of Commons. But yes, the final rights of the Governor General is the same as the King, and because he has to protect that Constitution and our country, he can fire anybody at will, okay? But he has to be justified, or she has to be justified. So the Governor General's role, the Governor General has the constitutional responsibility to ensure that the conventions of responsible government, POGG, are respected. That is not being respected now in Canada, and it has not been respected actually since 1982, but really we can say that right now with what's happening and all of the allegations, she needs to move things along. So okay, which means almost acting on the Prime Minister's advice. So again, here is the lie. Okay, so the Governor General has the constitutional responsibility to ensure that the conventions of responsible government, POGG, are respected, which means almost always acting on the Prime Minister's advice. She doesn't have to listen to him. She doesn't have to give royal assent. She's not bound by it if she has, and she's supposed to have a lawyer there to help her, or at least the Supreme Court justices to help her make decisions when there's a non-constitutional law being drafted. If she has, she cannot be assenting to unconstitutional laws, and she has done so, and so has previous Governor Generals, and even when Chief Justice Wagner from the Supreme Court of Canada became interim Governor General, he assented to the laws that were going against our rights, and that was again conflict of interest for him to do so, and then again to maybe sit, hopefully he wasn't sitting on the bench, given the fact that he was the one giving royal assent to certain of these acts and laws that were coming through. So again, you got to be very careful with what's going on. And these people, when they're put in the place of Governor General, they are supposed to be knowledgeable and to make sure that we're not being taken advantage of. And if they fail that, then they are in jeopardy of acting in a misfeasance manner, and that's not good for Canadians. So rules of Parliament, again, PM resignation. In Canada, the resignation of a Prime Minister terminates his or her commission, and consequently his or her government. A fresh commission must then be granted to a person to form a new government. The Canadian Privy Council Office explained in its 1968 Manual of Official Procedures of the Government of Canada The Prime Minister's resignation from office brings about the resignation of all ministers and of the government. Whether the Prime Minister's resignation follows a defeat in the House or at the polls or is for personal or other reasons, the life of the ministry is terminated with the formal acceptance of his resignation. Individual ministers, however, continue in office until the new government is formed. The government is identified with the Prime Minister and cannot exist without him. He alone is responsible for recommending who will be appointed ministers due to his political party winning the election. He can recommend their replacement or dismissal, and he can bring about the resignation of the whole government by his own resignation. Now, refusal of dissolution. The refusal of a dissolution may also give rise to the effective dismissal of a government. As Heard noted, rather than remove outright a government from office, a governor can induce a change in government by refusing its advice on some important matter, such as advising that an election should be held. If a government loses the confidence of the lower house, House of Commons, and advises a dissolution, and the head of state refuses to grant a dissolution because there is someone else who could form a government, then the chief minister is expected to resign. The 1926 King Byng affair in Canada is treated not only as a refusal of a dissolution, but also as an effective dismissal. If a chief minister does not resign after his or her advice to dissolve has been rejected by the head of government, he or she may be formally dismissed. Who's the head of government? The Governor General. So here you see here federal and provincial branches of government and how all of these go down from the legislative to executive and judicial. So it all comes down to right now Mary Simon, Governor General. And in Ontario, it would be Edith Jumeau. I'm sure she's still there. But anyways, that's how that works. So deliberate omission of the personal reserve powers of the Governor General by governments in times of emergency or special circumstances, such as a constitutional crisis, exercising the special personal authority of the Governor General to appoint or dismiss a Prime Minister, dissolve Parliament, or refuse royal assent of bills can be done without permission from the King. She doesn't have to ask nobody's permission, not even Trudeau or nobody else. Although this authority is rarely used, it must be implemented at this time in order to restore good governance. This has to be urgently undertaken given the abuse of power and the administrative and financial mismanagement of Canadian funds and assets by the Liberal and its supporting NDP government, further incriminating and affecting the authority of senators and Parliament, the Indigenous peoples and Canadians. Okay, it needs to be done now. So we're under a constitutional crisis. So what the Canadian government doesn't want you to know about the reserve powers and that the Governor General is the guardian of the Constitution. Why it matters to Canadians, Indigenous nations, federal, provincial, and municipal politicians, government legislatures, government administrators, and the courts. Power and responsibility. The reserve powers of the Crown continue to exist in Canada, exercised by vice-regals on rare but significant occasions. Their use highlight periods of constitutional uncertainties and crises when vice-regals may be called upon to make a political decision of major consequence, all in the name of defending and upholding the constitutional order of responsible government and parliamentary democracy. The 1968 Cabinet Manual of Canada states that the refusal of advice to dissolve Parliament amounts to the withdrawal of a Governor General's confidence in the Prime Minister. This is based upon the principle that the government must retain the confidence of the sovereign, hence the Governor, as well as the people through Parliament. The people are fed up. So I'm just going to take a drink here. Excuse me. But the people have had it in its time. 1 second here. Okay, sorry about that. Where am I here? Okay. So Jeepers. Now, peace, order, and good government, POGG, is a phrase that is used in Section 91 of the British North American Act of 1867 for responsible government, now called the Constitution Act 1867. So now they're starting to use responsible government instead. So here, in 1975, a monumental precedent unfolded in Australia when the Governor-General dismissed the Prime Minister despite their parliamentary support. And this is what's going to has constitutional lawyers all mixed up worldwide who are part of the monarchy or trying to do research on that. But in 2020, a court order in 2020 revealed the precedent set in 1975 regarding the personal reserve power of the GG of the 15 Commonwealth realm countries under the Imperial Crown. Okay, so I think I'm going to have to take a break here pretty soon. Now, in 1975, a monumental precedent unfolded in Australia when the Governor-General dismissed the Prime Minister despite their parliamentary support. The Governor-General claimed this action preserved good governance, though many disputed his authority to override the elected leader and dissolve the government. Nevertheless, the Governor-General exercised his personal prerogative to apparently safeguard the monarchy and stability of Australian governance, according to his private letters to the Queen released in 2020. And this is the young lady that actually did the research and finally went to court and won her case and got her hands on those letters. So here again, just to give you an idea of what they kind of look like, this is it. And now we're going to move on here. And the most important part here is the fact that the Governor-General knew that he did not have to ask the Queen's permission to fire the Prime Minister. And the reason for that is that the Prime Minister was starting to talk about Australia becoming a republic. So he had to protect the monarchy at all costs. And that's why he fired him. Okay. And he was protecting the monarchy and used the personal powers of the corporation sole, which is the right to protect everything and their business, really, their corporation. So this is how this was used. And, you know, it stipulates it right in there. You know, that he was protecting the monarchy and he wasn't doing it any harm. So here it says, it is, of course, true that anything you may do could indirectly affect the monarchy, perhaps an unenviable, but is certainly a very honorable position. If you what the Constitution dictates, you cannot possibly do the monarchy any avoidable harm. The chance you will do it good. So just in case you do not know it, I should like to quote to you Arthur Main's splendid phrase about the role of the Crown Governor-General in the Canadian Constitution. I hope you will forgive me for quoting a Canadian to an Australian, but I think it is good stuff. So anyways, when we start reading these letters, we see exactly where the Governor-General knew and had no doubts about his rights, full rights to clean house. If it's there's a constitutional, as long as he doesn't go against the Constitution and he is fearing for something happening to, you know, the head of state, well, he needed to move forward. So here it says, the fear of discretion left to a Governor-General under our Constitution and under our practice is a limited sphere indeed, but it is a sphere of dignity and great responsibility. Within the ambit of discretion residing still in the Crown in England and residing in the Governor-General in the Dominions. Okay? So again here, even though 1931 happened and the realm all came together, they still knew that, you know, the Queen was not really divisible. And I'll explain that after. So the Crown in England and residing in the Governor-General in the Dominions, there is a responsibility as great as falls to any estate of the realm or to any house of parliament. Within the sphere of that discretion, the plain duty of the Governor General is not to weaken responsible government, not to undermine the rights of Parliament. It is to make sure that responsible government is maintained, that the rights of Parliament are respected, that the still higher rights of the people are held sacred. Okay? The still higher rights of the people are held sacred. It is his duty to make sure that Parliament is not stifled by government, but that every government is held responsible to Parliament and every Parliament held responsible to the people. So they still owe us that duty, even though the Crown can step in, okay? And this is not being done here today. So here again, in regards to the Queen, here it says, from the Queen's point of view, I am sure that the one important principle to be maintained in what Her Majesty will only accept the crown in Papua New Guinea on the advice of her Australian ministers. Everything else, the details of the Constitution, the exact wording of Her Majesty's style and title, and so on, will come under this constitutional umbrella. So even in 1975, after Australia was independent, just like the other countries except for Canada, to have, you know, the UK fix our constitution, Australia wasn't placed in that position. However, because the Queen is not truly divisible, in the sense that she is the Queen for all of the realms, she is the Queen for the UK. She's the official Queen of the UK, and this is where, in this statement here, usually because Papua New Guinea was separating from Australia, because the Queen is the Queen of Australia, she had to take the advice of the Australian government in regards to Papua New Guinea. But in regards to her style, titles, and rights, that remains the right of the UK Parliament. Okay? So again, I will read this here. From the Queen's point of view, I am sure that the one important principle to be maintained is that Her Majesty will only accept the crown of Papua New Guinea on the advice of her Australian ministers. Everything else, the details of the Constitution, the exact wording of Her Majesty's style and title, and so on, will come under this constitutional umbrella. The umbrella of the United Kingdom. It seems to me, with respect, that those responsible in Canberra are very much alive to their responsibility in this matter and are keeping a watchful eye on the Queen's interests. And then on this letter it says, Pat and I have no doubt that it is, he's re-answering. So Pat and I have no doubt that it is an honorable function of the monarchy to provide a canopy beneath which newly independent countries can find their feet and make up their minds with the experience of independence on how exactly they wish their final constitution to be framed. So Papua New Guinea want to remain under the Queen until they decide what they were going to do with their constitution. Okay? Because at that point they can walk away. So again, when you fall under the Crown, you fall under the UK. The UK ministers have the right to counsel the Queen on what happens in that country because of her rights and titles and her constitutional rights. So again, you know, it's a little bit confusing, but at the same time, we need to understand what we're dealing with here. So again, here, this is just the Crown's sovereign power stems from royal prerogative, which include the personal reserve power. The Crown is tasked with safeguarding the corporation for the people while leading as its head of state. Okay, so here we have a schematic that you'll be able to see here. So now this is, again, just something going back to what happened from 1925 to 1926 in Canada. You know, and then Stephen Harper, 2008 prorogation crisis. Michaëlle Jean could have said no to Stephen Harper, and she could have, you know, because they weren't. He hadn't prepared his. If I remember well, it was the budget, and he needed more time to fix the budget. So, anyways, So again, the Kerr Palace Letters, 1975, released in Australia in 2020 by the High Court. All of the constitutional lawyers now will have to go and read these letters and see exactly what the rights the Governor General had in regards to the Queen's personal rights and place that all together. And this is what we had to go and look for and to see exactly, because even back then, the secretary for the Queen did not want to allow the people to know exactly what was going on in regards to her personal powers, because if everybody knew that the King Charles or the Queen could turn around tomorrow and take over Canada and start running it legally, even though we could kind of do a battle there, because we're being misfits and allowing our government to dishonor the crown, they could step in and do something if they legally wanted to. And because the people would find that out, they might want to get rid of the crown altogether. Okay, so here in Canada, now this one is really important. We are being ruled by law and not under the rule of law. And this has been being proven by Paul Salambier. And this means that we are under what is called a soft dictatorship by stealth. Canadian laws are not formed properly as dictated by the rule of law. They are badly written laws drafted by those, and usually lawyers at the federal, provincial, and municipal levels, who do not understand how to properly draft laws or ensure that the laws do not circumvent our legally binding Bill of Human Rights in Canada, that Canada and the UK have signed, that supersedes the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Now, this kind of overlapped here for some reason. Now, deinstitutionalizing corruption, published in The Loophole. Now, somebody mentioned earlier that Trudeau says that, oh, there's a loophole he can use. No, he's lying through his teeth. The only loophole that he can use is based on the lies that the government has already created in regards to the old ways of changing laws within the provincial colonized way. So no, he can't do that, and he's only lying through his teeth. Okay, so the first area involves here is the use of subjective modifiers, like using words like reasonable or significant, and in other words, words that are incapable of any fixed meaning because they denote a quality that is inherently subjective. Because they are subjective, their assessment will vary from person to person, and the use of such term in legal rules gives officials charged with implementing those rules an opportunity to distort the application of the rules for their own purposes. So they're using words that allow them to manipulate the laws to suit the outcome they want. So again, here you have the word reasonable. Well, it was found over 2,000 times in the statutes. The word unduly was found 71 times in the statutes. Excessive is found 235 times in the statutes. Significant is found 1,096 times in the statutes. And there's a lot more. Paul gave me the list, and I've been looking at that list, and to go through all of the laws is just unbelievable. But somebody at the end of this, we're going to have to make sure that somebody goes in there and rechecks all of these laws because they do not follow the rule of law, because they're using terms like this created by lawyers and who don't even understand our international law rights, let alone our human rights, or even legislatures that don't even have the full understanding. So we need to teach all of these people. It's not Jordan Peterson or others that need to go back for re-education, because the way that they've turned things around now is that they're forcing us to accept lies and to agree with lies, and that's the woke mentality. So now they've brought in the woke mentality within our governance, which is totally wrong. And when you're supposed to accept gender and all of these things, when your chromosomes don't lie, they are forcing us to lie and saying, okay, yeah, chromosomes lie. They say follow the science when they do not follow the science. Because if you follow the science, we'd have no issues with transgenderism. Okay, no issues at all with that. It's straightforward. Chromosomes do not lie. So when we're looking at even words in our laws that can be subverted, what do we do with that? Well, we need to go and clean all that up. People, we need to clean house, and we need to do it fast. Thanks for listening and watching, and enjoy your weekend. And now when you hear the words economic, you need to pay real attention, because that's one way of them getting into our country, taking over all of our corporations, and within that, all of our natural resources, and have total control over the employees throughout this country. So have a great weekend and enjoy, and hopefully we'll see you becoming Canadian referendum community members in helping the CPU. We need all the help we can get. If you want to see this movement continue, please help us either by joining the referendum community at $25 a year, or the CPU membership under VIP, where you get to work with us and have access to me during the day. Or again, just simply donate. Your donations are safe. You can also donate through e-transfer. All of the donations go directly to us. We don't have a middleman in there that can give away the lists of people who have donated and placing you in jeopardy. So hopefully we'll see you in our community soon, because if you want to see this movement prosper, we need the support of the people. Thank you.